I'm trying to piece together a last days timeline tying Esdras from Second Esdras, the book of Revelations, John's Revelation, and Daniel together. In Second Esdras chapter 11, verse 22, it says, "And after this I looked, and behold, the 12 feathers appeared no more, nor the 2 little feathers." If this is a bad interpretation, or if this really means that the 2 feathers were part of the 12 and they'd never materialized, then all of this snaps into place in my mind and makes sense. So if Esdras was explaining that there were actually 10 feathers, not 12, then the contrary feathers or tail feathers would be the next 8. Then that would be 18. But according to Daniel and John, the 8th is one of the previous 7. So in John's Revelation, it says in chapter 17, "And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition." So if this is the case, then John saw a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, 17, but one of them repeats itself, which is the 18th. Esdras saw 12 feathers, but 2 of them were short feathers, so they didn't materialize. They thought to rule, but didn't. And then 8 contrary feathers, which makes 18. If that's the case, then we start with Herbert Hoover and go 10 presidents until the last 8. And the last 8 are what the scriptures goes into detail about. So Daniel talks about the war where the he-goat came from the west, knocks out the ram, beats it in, stamps him into the ground, and then heads home. If that war marks this stout horn, or this first of the last 8 kings, that's where my timeline starts. So if President George Bush Sr. is the last of the 8th kings, then the Gulf War would have been this war that Daniel talks about in Daniel chapter 8. And if that's the case, then we have George Bush Sr., then Bill Clinton, then George Bush Jr., then Obama, then Donald Trump, then Biden. That makes 6. Now, Daniel talks about somebody stepping into the place of the 6th, but they don't actually have their own place. So in Daniel chapter 11, verse 18, it says, "But a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach, he shall cause it to turn upon him. And then he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes." So this person stands in the estate of the 6th king, "in the glory of the kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. And in his estate shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries." So the description here, according to this interpretation, is Biden is president. He has this prince that causes him reproach that he pardons. He stumbles, which cue the gifts. Biden's the most stumbling president we've had. And then he is replaced by somebody, but this person stands in his place, raises taxes, and is only there a short time. They aren't given the honor of the kingdom. They're not made president, but they stand in his place as president. And they get there. They get into that position by flatteries. So if that is indeed Biden and Kamala, then the 8th king, which is one of the previous 7, spoken of by Daniel and John and Esdras, is the last king or the last ruler of this nation, which Daniel refers to as Greece, but I'm not sure that's a great translation. And in Daniel chapter 11, verse 22, it goes on to explain this last king. And with the arms of a flood shall they be overthrown from before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. So this guy is referred to as the prince of the covenant. And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. So the league made with him is the treaty of peace with many for 7 years, and the abomination that maketh desolations set up. So that's really what I'm trying to set the stage for. If Donald Trump is this Antichrist in the last days that the scriptures have talked about, what is the treaty of peace with many? How do we know he's the Antichrist? Where do we go from here? So, if the treaty of peace with many is the fact that Donald Trump announced Israel as the capital, Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, he made that declaration in December of 2017, December 6th of 2017. Then the COVID lockdowns shut down temple work, shut down churches. If that is the setting up of the abomination that maketh desolation spoken of by Daniel, which according to Daniel takes 2,300 days to set up, then Trump isn't in power anymore, but then he returns to power. That fits the bill for him being the Antichrist. Also, I'm not sure that deadly wound is a good translation, but the bullet that hit Trump killed somebody else. So that would be a deadly wound. If his deadly wound was healed, wounded in the head, but his deadly wound was healed, that also fits Trump. I was listening to a CIA whistleblower on a YouTube video who said that they were talking about the Illuminati and how the Illuminati rules the world behind the scenes. And the interviewer asked, how do you become a senior member of the Illuminati? Like, how do you become one of those guys? And the whistleblower said, you don't. You're either born into it, or, I mean, you can work your way into the top of an organization run by it, but you can't become a senior member of the Illuminati without being born into it. So President Trump had said years ago, before he ran for president, that he was a senior member of the Illuminati. And it got me to thinking. So that day I was talking to a friend of mine, and we got online and looked up Donald Trump's genealogy, which we can't. Subsequently, like after that, I tried to do it again, and the website that I went to would only let me go back 3 generations, where it let me go back even further before. But what we found was Trump's genealogy ties him into the line of the kings of the Jews. So Jesus Christ, after he died, his family was taken to the border country of the Basque country between Spain and France. And their last name was Christ. And all of them and all of their descendants intermarried with the rulers of the world. So in order to legitimately claim that you had authority to rule the world, you would have your children marry into the Christ line, Christ being a descendant of God, and then you could claim authority from God to rule. Well, Jesus Christ's oldest son, all the way down, landed on a man by the name of Thomas Christ. Thomas Christ had 28 children and no sons. He had 28 daughters. At that point, the line's broken. You can't. The line of the kings going from father to son is broken. So the question is, who becomes the leader? Is it the oldest daughter's children, or does it pass some other way. So there's a disputation literally in the Illuminati as to who runs who has authority to rule. Well, Thomas Christ's oldest daughter married Frank Trump, and he sent her from Canada to America with the bulk of his life's earnings to sanitize the family name and start over in America, because Frank Trump made all his money running whorehouses in Canada. So his wife and their oldest child moved to America, started real estate. Donald was born, grandson of Frank Trump, and his older brother didn't like the family business, blew the whistle on it, tried to tell everybody what was going on, and then he committed suicide, leaving Donald the heir apparent to the throne of David. And so he has the pedigree to fit the prince that is to come. It makes sense that he is that guy. Couple of indicators of this guy is that he will speak dark sentences. He will be no respecter of women. He'll be out of power and then back into power. And during his tenure, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. If that happened during the COVID lockdowns, then we have 2,300 days from the time that the lockdowns happened until the abomination that maketh desolations is set up. If Daniel and John and Ezra's are right, then there are only 8 rulers in the end times, and they start with the Gulf War. I mean, that's my interpretation. They start with the Gulf War. If I'm correct about that, if Biden is the stumbler and Kamala is the person who stands in his stead and raises taxes and is there for a short time, then Trump is the last president of the United States. And everything falls apart during his tenure, 2,300 days after the temples were closed and the churches closed and the daily sacrifice taken away. Then the abomination that maketh desolations will be set up, and we're in for a whirlwind.